Hello guys, tonight we step into your boots, well more like your heavy leather shoes laced tight, because you are a medieval knight at dawn. The morning air bites with the damp chill of a recent rain, and all around you the wooden swords clack and scrape as other trainees stumble through drills on the muddy training grounds. You trudge through the wet earth, boots sinking slightly with every step, your breath puffing little clouds into the crisp air. The smell of damp straw and freshly turned soil mingles with the sharp tang of iron from the blacksmith's forge. Nearby, birds chirp uncertainly, perhaps debating if this day will bring peace or war. Your task is simple but relentless. Prepare your body and mind for battle, because, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive your first real fight without a serious amount of practice. Yet here you are, waking before the sun, muscles stiff but eager, knowing that every drop of sweat might save your life, or at least keep you from being the castle's joke. You spot the other squires, faces tight with concentration, wielding wooden swords with varying degrees of grace and disaster. Nearby, your master instructor shouts orders, voice booming across the field. The drills begin with footwork, shuffling, lunging, retreating, a dance learned over years but never perfect. Historians still argue whether knights truly train daily or if tales of rigorous preparation are romantic exaggerations. But your aching limbs don't lie. You pause for a moment, noticing the gleam of a well-worn training sword catching the pale light. A quirk of your routine. Some knights swear by the weight and balance of their wooden practice swords, believing that a well-crafted one builds better skill than a dull steel blade. You wonder if you could fashion one yourself, if you had the time or the patience. Your mind drifts briefly to the odd superstitions floating around camp. Some swear that chewing a sprig of rosemary before drills sharpens reflexes, while others believe that carrying a rabbit's foot tucked inside your gambeson brings luck in battle. You tuck a loose strand of hair beneath your coif and shake off the distractions. Today is for training. Today, you become sharper, steadier, stronger. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, why not drop your location and local time in the comments? I'm curious where this story is reaching across the centuries. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. Together, you begin with the morning ritual, the grueling footwork, the clashing of wooden swords, the quick, sharp commands echoing through the misty courtyard. Your muscles remember every step, every parry, though your body protests with mild complaints that will soon turn to fond aches. The sky lightens slowly as a night takes shape. Not in grand, glorious battle yet, but here, in these muddy, repetitive moments, where skill becomes habit and courage is built, one wooden strike at a time. You stand before your armor, a silent, heavy companion waiting patiently to be wrestled onto your body. The morning's chill makes you shiver as you reach out to the cold steel plates, their polished surfaces gleaming faintly in the dim light. The ritual of suiting up begins, a dance of straps, buckles, and clinks that has become almost meditative. First, the padded gambeson hugs your torso, soft but thick, like a warm, quilted hug meant to cushion the blows, yet allow you to move. Then come the chainmail hauberk, 1,000 tiny rings, interlinked like a metal web that shifts and sways with your every move, weighing you down, but promising protection. The process feels like getting into a second skin, but a much louder, clumsier, and definitely heavier one. You tighten the leather belts that hold the plates in place, feeling the strange comfort of cold metal pressing against your muscles. By the time you fasten the helmet, its narrow eye slits framing your world. The weight is undeniable. Your head feels cradled yet constrained, the sound of your own breathing amplified inside. Yet somehow, this metal embrace is familiar, and you find a certain calm in it, like a modern-day cocoon made of iron and resolve. You remember the stories the older knights told about how the earliest medieval armor weighed up to 60 pounds or more, practically a suit of medieval gym equipment. Historians still argue whether knights actually fought effectively while fully armored, or if the armor was mainly for parade and intimidation. But you can't deny how your own limbs feel sluggish, the extra weight turning even the simplest movements into calculated efforts. Here's a quirky fact you never expected. Some knights believed wearing their armor for a full day before a battle would break it in and even bring good luck. Others swore by coating their armor with a mixture of vinegar and crushed crocodile dung. Yes, really, to prevent rust and evil spirits. You think you'll stick to a bit more conventional upkeep, thanks, as you tighten the gauntlets around. Your wrists, you notice the subtle dents and scratches collected over months of training and skirmishes. Each mark tells a story, a near miss, a hard strike, a lesson learned. You flex your fingers inside the metal gloves and feel the balance between protection and dexterity, a constant medieval engineering puzzle. Despite the awkwardness and weight, you find yourself oddly comforted. The armor is not just protection, it is a statement. A badge of your place in this layered world of kings, knights, and common folk. It reminds you of the responsibility you carry, both the visible burden of steel and the invisible weight of duty and honor. You take a deep breath inside your helmet, the cool air mixing with a faint scent of oil and leather, and prepare to step into your role fully armored and ready. Like a knight stepping out of legend and into the muddy reality of your day. You shift your weight as you listen to the old knight's voice, slow and deliberate, like the ticking of a distant clock, as he explains the code of chivalry. It's not just about swinging swords or riding horses, it's a complex web of honor, loyalty, humility, and courage, all stitched together with a golden thread of idealism that often clashes with the rough reality around you. You might think chivalry is just fancy manners for the upper class, but it's really about defining what it means to be a good knight in a world where violence and politics are the daily bread. You learn that chivalry demands you defend the weak, keep your promises, and show mercy even to your enemies. A tall order when your enemy might be sharpening a dagger behind a tree. It's a constant balancing act between being a fierce warrior and a humble servant of your Lord and God. The old knight tells you stories of famous knights who embodied these ideals, but also those who failed spectacularly. You try to picture yourself in their worn boots, deciding whether to show mercy or strike hard, and wondering if you'd have the courage to choose the harder path. Historians still argue whether the chivalric code was ever truly followed, or if it was more of a lofty goal for knights who mostly cared about glory and loot. But you decide it's probably somewhere in the messy middle. After all, even you have moments when a nice, quiet skirmish sounds better than a grand gesture. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some knights practiced courtly love, a peculiar tradition where you'd compose poems or perform brave deeds for a noble lady, often from afar and without expecting anything in return. The whole idea seems both romantic and a bit awkward, like medieval dating app vibes without the swiping. You suspect most of the time it was more about showing off in front of your peers than genuine affection. But hey, a little poetry never hurt anyone's reputation. As you absorb these lessons, you feel the weight of expectations settling on your shoulders. Alongside the weight of your armor, you begin to understand that being a knight is not just about physical strength, but also about mastering social codes and navigating the delicate dance of power and respect. It's a world where your word is your bond, and breaking it could mean losing more than just honor. It could cost you your life. You glance down at your gauntleted hands and wonder if you'll ever be able to fully live up to this ideal. But for now, you hold on to the promise of the code, letting it shape your thoughts as you prepare for the day ahead, knowing that every choice you make, every sword you lift, carries the invisible ink of chivalry. You step into the heart of the castle, a sprawling maze of stone corridors, wooden beams, and flickering torchlight. The air is thick with the mingled scents of roasting meat, melting wax, and a faint hint of damp stone that never quite leaves. These ancient walls, it's a world of contrasts, the grand and the gritty, the regal and the routine, and you are caught somewhere between, trying to find your place in this medieval hive. The day begins with a clatter as servants rush to prepare the great hall for the morning meal. Long tables groan under the weight of bread, cheese, and steaming pottages. Simple fare compared to what the lords enjoy, but hearty enough to fuel a morning of training or labor. You tuck into a hunk of coarse bread dipped in honey, the sweetness surprising against the sour tang of the ale some of the kitchen staff sneak you. A small luxury, but a welcome one. The castle buzzes with a curious mix of activity and ceremony. You pass the blacksmith, hammering rhythmically as sparks fly, and the stable hands, who murmur quietly as they tend the restless horses. You overhear snippets of gossip, whispers about the Lord's daughter, rumors of bandits spotted in the forest, and the odd complaint about the new cook's penchant for adding too much garlic. You soon find yourself assigned chores, the less glamorous side of nightly life. Today, it's helping repair the wooden palisades damaged in last week's storm. You grab a hammer and nails, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on you. This is your castle, your lord's fortress, and if the walls fall, so do you. The physical labor is exhausting but grounding, a reminder that knighthood isn't all tournaments and poetry. Historians still argue whether knights regularly participated in such menial tasks, or if those were mostly left to peasants and servants. From your experience, it seems the truth is somewhere in between. While the elite knights certainly had servants to do most of the grunt work, the younger squires and less wealthy knights often rolled up their sleeves. Lunch is a quieter affair. You sit with a small group of squires and pages, sharing stories and swapping tips about sword technique. The mood is light, but beneath the laughter lies a shared understanding. This life is not easy, and every day could bring new challenges. One of your comrades complains about the Lord's new tax policies, which will surely tighten the purse strings and make provisions scarcer come winter. After eating, you wander toward the chapel, drawn by the soft murmur of prayer and the flicker of candlelight. The castle chapel is a humble but sacred space where knights and servants alike come to seek comfort and guidance. You pause to admire the carved wooden pews and stained glass windows that throw shards of colored light onto the stone floor. It's here you remind yourself why you fight, not just for glory or land, but for something deeper, something like faith or honor. Here's a quirky little fact. In some castles, the chapel bell was also used as an alarm system, ringing not just for prayer, but to warn of fires, invasions, or even bad weather. Imagine the sudden clang of that bell echoing through the cold stone halls, sending everyone scrambling. It must have been both terrifying and oddly reassuring. As the afternoon sun filters through narrow windows, you resume your patrol of the castle's inner courtyards. The sound of your boots against stone echoes softly, a steady rhythm that helps focus your thoughts. You pass the armory, where rows of gleaming weapons and battered shields rest in neat ranks. Each piece tells a story, silent witnesses to battles, won and lost. Historians still debate whether castles were primarily military fortresses or symbols of lordly power designed to impress and intimidate. From where you stand, they seem to be both. Strongholds built to withstand sieges, but also grand homes showcasing wealth and status. Your final task before evening is to assist with the preparations for the evening feast, a grand affair where lords, ladies, and knights gather to eat, drink, and exchange news. You help lay out polished goblets and carefully arrange platters, marveling at the contrast between the humble bread of breakfast and the rich venison, spiced wines, and delicate pastries that await. As you finish, the first torches are lit, casting warm flickers of light across the stone walls. The castle's bustling daytime energy gives way to a more relaxed, festive atmosphere. You find a moment to pause, inhaling deeply the mingled scents of roasting meat, flickering candles, and the ever-present stone. Today, you have lived a day in the castle, part warrior, part laborer, part courtier, and you realize that knighthood is a patchwork of many roles. The glamour of armor and battle is only part of the story. The rest is found in these quiet, often overlooked moments. You mount your horse as the morning mist still clings to the castle battlements, the chill seeping through your layered clothing and armor. The horse shifts beneath you, restless and eager, its breath steaming in the cool air. You grip the reins, feeling the familiar weight and strength beneath you, your trusted companion through countless patrols. Today, you ride the castle walls, a sentinel watching over your lord's domain, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble or wandering bandits. The path along the ramparts is narrow and uneven, cobbled in rough stone, worn smooth by countless footsteps. You move steadily, the rhythm of hooves and your steady breathing the only sounds, apart from the occasional call of a crow or the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Below you, the castle grounds bustle with activity. Servants hauling, barrels, children darting between tents, and guards sharpening their weapons. Up here you feel removed, yet responsible for all of it. Your patrol route takes you past the watchtowers, where lookouts stand like statues, eyes fixed far beyond the castle's protective walls. You exchange nods with one of them, a wiry man with a weathered face and sharp gaze. He points toward the east, where the forest edges the horizon, a patchwork of shadows and light. "Quiet today," he murmurs, "but the wind shifts, and so do the dangers." Historians still debate how frequent actual attacks on castles were. Some say sieges were rare and mostly symbolic, while others point to the constant low-level skirmishes and raids that made vigilance essential. From your vantage point, every rustle in the trees feels like a whispered warning, every shadow a potential threat. You pull your cloak tighter around you as the sun begins its slow climb, warming the cold stone beneath your horse's hooves. The air carries a mix of scents, the earthy aroma of moss and wet stone, the faint perfume of wildflowers growing near the battlements, and the unmistakable tang of smoke from distant hearth fires. One curious custom you recall involves the use of beast calls, horns shaped like animals that were blown during patrols to communicate across the sprawling castle grounds. Each horn had a unique sound, like a medieval version of texting, but with way more echoes and probably a lot more confusion. As you circle the walls, you catch sight of the villagers in the nearby settlement going about their day, their movements slow and careful. You wonder what they think of the imposing stone fortress looming over their fields. To them, it is both protector and overlord, a source of safety and occasional hardship. Your patrol continues to the gatehouse, where the portcullis stands lowered, its iron teeth ready to bite down at a moment's notice. You watch the guards inspecting carts and travelers, their faces a mix of suspicion and boredom. You remind yourself how vital their role is. Every breach could mean disaster, but today, the gate remains secure. As the sun climbs higher, you make your way back toward the keep, feeling the comforting weight of routine settling in. Patrols might not be glamorous, but they are the steady heartbeat of castle life, the invisible thread that holds peace together. Your thoughts drift to the rumors you heard yesterday, whispers of unrest in neighboring lands, potential alliances shifting like sand. You press your heels into your horse's flanks and pick up the pace, the wind rushing past and the familiar strain in your legs, reminding you that despite the armor, despite the protocol, you are alive and moving. And for now, that is enough. The blacksmith's forge is a world unto itself, a fiery island amid the cool shadows of the castle's stone walls. You step inside, the heat washing over you in waves as the air thickens with smoke and the smell of molten metal. The rhythmic pounding of hammer against anvil reverberates through the space, a primal song of creation and destruction. The blacksmith, a burly man with arms like tree trunks and a face smeared with soot, nods briefly as you enter. His hands never stop moving, shaping glowing iron into weapons and armor, the lifeblood of your survival. You watch as he cools a newly forged sword in a barrel of water, steam hissing as the metal sings its final song. The blade gleams, sharp and deadly, a promise of protection and power. It's easy to forget, amid the glamour of battles and tournaments, the sheer craftsmanship behind every piece of your equipment. This forge, more than any royal decree or chivalric code, is where your fate is truly forged. Historians still debate how advanced medieval blacksmiths really were. Some argue their methods were surprisingly sophisticated, while others think many techniques were simple and passed down orally. But one thing is clear. The blacksmith was a pivotal figure, part artisan, part magician, turning raw earth into tools of war. You recall a quirky story. Some blacksmiths used strange rituals to bless their work, like wrapping swords in wolf pelts, or whispering prayers to protect the wielder. Whether superstition or faith, it adds a mystical layer to this fiery craft. You can't help but wonder if your own sword carries such secrets within its cold steel. Your own gauntlets thud softly as you clench your fists, feeling the reassuring weight of your weapons hanging at your side. The blacksmith hands you a newly sharpened dagger, its edge razor thin. "Keep this close," he grunts. "You never know when you'll need a quick hand." Beyond the forge's glow, you hear the castle bustle, footsteps echoing, voices murmuring, the distant call to prayer. The forge is a small, smoky bubble, a pause in the relentless rhythm of castle life. You breathe deeply, savoring the warmth and the sense of creation. Outside, the blacksmith's apprentices scurry about, carrying tools or fetching water. They move with eager energy, learning the craft that might one day define their lives. You think about your own journey. How many hands have shaped your armor, your weapons, your skills? It's a chain of effort and care that spans generations. As you leave the forge, the sun has climbed higher, casting long shadows across the courtyard. You feel the familiar mix of exhaustion and purpose that comes from being both maker and warrior. The blacksmith's fire may be behind the scenes, but without it, your story would be very different. You adjust your grip on your sword, the cool leather familiar and comforting. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, training, patrols, perhaps even combat. But for now, you carry the spark of the forge within you, a steady flame of strength and resilience. The early morning fog still clings to the fields as you ride out beyond the castle walls, the soft earth beneath your horse's hooves damp and yielding. Today is about scouting, a crucial, if less glamorous, part of your nightly duties. Your orders are clear. Ride the nearby woods and farmlands, keep an eye out for anything unusual, and report back swiftly. The landscape stretches wide and wild, a mix of tangled forest, rolling hills, and scattered villages. It's a world teeming with life and quiet dangers, the kind that don't always announce themselves with the clang of swords. Your horse moves steadily through the trees, the leaves muffling your passage. The sounds of birds and small animals echo around you, creating a calm soundtrack that contrasts sharply with the tension simmering just beneath the surface. You scan the horizon, watching for signs, a broken branch, a hastily abandoned campfire, or the faint footprints of strangers. Historians still argue about how often medieval knights undertook such reconnaissance missions themselves versus sending peasants or specialized scouts. From your experience, it seems the truth depends on the urgency and the size of the force. Sometimes only the most trusted knights ride out, carrying the weight of both information and responsibility. You recall a curious detail. In some regions, scouts used trained birds like hawks or ravens to relay messages quickly over long distances. The idea of releasing a feathered messenger into the sky feels almost poetic, a contrast to the heavy steel and stone of your daily life. You imagine the bird soaring, a silent witness to the vastness below. The forest begins to thin as you approach. A small village nestled in a clearing. Smoke curls lazily from thatched rooftops, and you catch glimpses of villagers tending their gardens or repairing tools. They glance up as you pass, a mixture of curiosity and wariness in their eyes. You offer a nod, hoping to convey reassurance. Your role here is protector, not oppressor. You dismount to inspect a nearby field where crops seem withered, an unusual sight given the season. A farmer explains in halting words that pests have been ravaging the plants, and a band of traveling merchants recently passed through selling strange remedies. The situation reminds you how much of medieval life depended on fragile balances: weather, pests, trade, and trust. As you prepare to leave, a sudden rustle in the underbrush catches your attention. You freeze, heart quickening, as a fox darts across your path. A small relief, but a reminder of how the wild world remains unpredictable. You stroke your horse's neck, feeling the pulse of life beneath you, and resume your patrol. The ride back to the castle feels slower, the sun now warming your shoulders. You think about the delicate dance of power and survival playing out in these quiet corners of the realm. Your role, though small, feels essential, keeping watch, gathering knowledge, and readying for whatever might come. By the time you return, the castle gates are wide open, welcoming you back to the solid safety of stone walls and familiar faces. The day's scouting may have yielded little drama, but the sense of vigilance stays with you, a silent companion as the afternoon stretches ahead. The afternoon sun slants through the narrow windows of the great hall as you take your place among the other knights and squires gathered for training. The hall, usually a place for feasting and council, transforms now into a chamber of discipline and practice. The air hums with the soft clang of wooden swords and the shuffle of boots on stone. This is where you hone your skills, where theory meets sweat and muscle, and where the ideal of knighthood is carved out stroke by stroke. You start with footwork drills, the instructor's voice steady and calm as he calls out commands. Your boots scrape against the flagstones, dust rising in tiny clouds as you pivot and advance. Precision matters here more than brute strength. The smallest misstep could mean defeat on the battlefield. You feel your heartbeat quicken, a steady drum syncing with the clash of practice blades around you, a mainstream fact worth noting. Many medieval knights spent hours daily on training, especially with the lance and sword, to maintain readiness for battle or tournaments. The image of knights only fighting in grand clashes is misleading. Most of their time was dedicated to preparation, sometimes monotonous but crucial. One of the younger squires clumsily swings a wooden sword, narrowly missing your helmeted head. The group chuckles, and you remind yourself that even the clumsiest apprentice will one day face real steel. Training is as much about patience and mentorship as it is about combat. A quirky tradition here involves the Herald's Challenge, where knights would mock challenge each other with playful taunts and riddles before sparring, a medieval form of banter to break tension. Your instructor circles you, nodding approvingly. At your form, keep your guard up and remember, control, not force. You nod, absorbing the advice and adjusting your stance. The weight of the wooden sword feels light compared to real steel, but the lessons transfer all the same. Historians still debate whether medieval knights preferred heavy, overwhelming force or more refined, tactical fighting styles. Your experience suggests a balance, Sometimes brute strength won the day, but finesse and timing could tip the scales unexpectedly. Next comes lance practice in the courtyard. Mounted on your horse, you charge down the narrow track, aiming your lance at a padded target. The horse's gallop shakes your entire body, and you grip the reins tightly, focusing on steadying your aim. The target shudders under the impact, and you feel a surge of satisfaction. Tournaments may seem like mere spectacle, but they serve serious purposes, testing skill, building reputation, and forging alliances. After the drills, you join your comrades for a quiet moment of respite. The courtyard smells of fresh hay and warm leather, and the sun's rays feel gentle on your face. You exchange stories of past battles and jokes about the Lord's latest fashion disaster, a velvet hat too big for his head that threatens to become a legend. Training here is not just about becoming a better fighter. It's about belonging, about becoming part of a brotherhood that will stand beside you in hardship and glory. You glance at the distant horizon, imagining the challenges yet to come. The day's final exercise is archery. You take your place among the bowmen, aiming at targets set against the far wall. The bowstring twangs as you release your arrow, which flies true, hitting near the center. The satisfaction is sharp, a small triumph in a long day. As dusk approaches, the great hall fills with the soft murmur of knights shedding their gear and preparing for the evening meal. You feel the ache of muscles and the glow of accomplishment. Tomorrow will bring new duties and demands, but for now, you savor this hard-earned rest. Evening falls softly over the castle. The village as you bell make your way toward the chapel this morning. The scent of hollow clang tallow candles across the hills, mingling with the cool a festival day. The great stone walls of the chapel rise solemn and silent, political whispers, a refuge of quiet amid the restless. It's a rare reprieve for both villages. You enter, and castle folk alike creaking shut behind you. Rise before the sun, the distant sounds of the evening meal, and feel the buzz of anticipation humming even long shadows across the stained glass, painting today's celebration marks the feast day of a local saint, long woven into the fabric of the regions. The polished surface cool. There will be music, your hands, dancing and storytelling. The clamor of even steel and duty, symbols of stern beauty, are expected to attend, and the gentle not just echo as protectors, him, but as part of the community. It is a place to reflect. As you make your way down to the chaos of night, the roads are already lined with religion in a medieval night's life slightly can hardly be overstated. Children run ahead of carts loaded with apples, prayers and honey cakes, and barrels of divine favor for battles, and the church doors stand open. Some believe their armor was not just and centuries of but a shield blessed by holy mainstream fact, infused with feast days in medieval Europe. Historians were not still just religious whether these rituals were mostly for personal breaks from labor, or if knights and truly believed in their protective power. For many, perhaps they were among the few days in the year marked by both indulgence your thoughts drifting to the peculiar tradition of the churchyard as a group of village boys enacts a mock joust. Some knights bore fragments of upside-down buckets for helmets, or splinters of the cross, touched within their armor dramatically or swords, dies, believing these relics could turn the tide of battle, tongues whether sticking superstition or faith flair. These items held immense psychological weight, bolstering the courage in the face of mortal danger, and offers a hesitant salute. The priest's voice with exaggerated solemnity, causing the boys to break into giggles to wrap around the stones the village square. Things are coming to life. Close your eyes. A troop of musicians brushing against near a hay cart. The distant lights and setting out small drums. A whisper. The chapel's stained glass windows fine embroidery as the candle flames dance and carve a kaleidoscope of color and everything light. Smells. You recall the story of a knight who, and the earthy sweetness of straw. You join the other knights beneath a modest canopy near the and a worn medallion. Armor has been swapped for simpler tunics adorned with fate or faith. The tale underscores the intimate connection between spirituality villagers and survival in this life, offering respectful bows and outside small tokens. The night is alive with the soft sprig of lavender owl, even the rustle of leaves in the breeze. One older woman clasps your hand, the wooden floorboards and thanks you quietly for resolving the irrigation as you leave the chapel. The previous cool night air embraces you again. Her fingers a gentle reminder that the day's duties are done. It's moments like this that remind you of the invisible threads between warrior and community. Then comes the dancing. Back in your chamber, circle forms. The flicker of a single candle illuminates your armor and sword to a resting nearby beat. The silence is profound, half voluntary, broken only by the steady ticking of a wooden clock, and soon find yourself sigh of the wind but cheerfully in time. You prepare your sword arm isn't much knowing that tomorrow will bring new challenges, and genuine applause, and new somewhere in the crowd, you hear a minstrel recounting tales lie back on your simple straw mattress so poorly. The coarse fabric rough against your skin, quirky fact, but strangely comforting. Medieval knights were expected to be well-rounded. The weight of armor and chess, poetry, replaced and even by playing musical instruments were considered essential parts of courtly linger in your mind. A gentle lullaby weaving through the shadows. In battle, the first light of dawn filters through your narrow chamber whether these nightly cultural expectations were widespread or limited to higher nobility. You awaken to the familiar sounds of the castle. Being a knight isn't all steel and scars echoing in the corridors. It's also rhythm, distant clang of metal, and the occasional and the low murmur of voices. Preparing as the day wanes, today the village prepares for the final ritual. A council meeting with the Lord and his advisors, logs where politics and strategy replace the clang of swords, and lit just after sunset. Quickly, the leather straps of your armor creaking as dancing shadows across faces young and old. Settles on someone your begins a chant, a constant reminder of your role, and the voices join not just warriors, low, but also melodic, servants to their lord's will. You stand at the edge of the fires of loyalty and honor. You make your way through winding corridors to the great chamber, where tapestries hang heavy edges of your tunic history, and for a moment you're just one figure dominates the space. By the same Lord flame sits at the head. There's something deeply human about this gathering. No titles, no swords, no looming wars, just etched with concern over recent border skirmishes and rumors of unrest in under the protective gaze of both castle and with the scent of the burning wax and parchment. You listen as strategies are discussed, troop movements, supply lines and alliances. You realize that wars are won not only by swords, but by words spoken in rooms like this. A mainstream. Fact worth noting, medieval knights often served as advisors and administrators, not just fighters. Their education in tactics and leadership was as vital as their prowess in battle. The image of knights charging blindly into combat overlooks their role in governance and diplomacy. One advisor raises a peculiar proposal to hire mercenaries from distant lands, warriors with unfamiliar weapons and tactics. This suggestion sparks debate. Some see the value in new skills, others worry about loyalty and cost. Historians still argue whether mercenary use significantly altered medieval warfare or merely supplemented traditional forces. You quietly note the complexity of loyalty in this world. Your oath binds you to your lord, but the shifting sands of politics make every allegiance fragile. The Lord's gaze occasionally flicks to you, a reminder that your role may soon extend beyond the battlefield. After the council breaks, you linger in the chamber, absorbing the weight of responsibility. You think about the paradox of knighthood, warriors who must also be diplomats, strategists who must also be servants. The life of a knight is as much about navigating human alliances as it is about wielding a sword. Outside, the castle courtyard buzzes with activity. Blacksmiths forging, archers training, servants scurrying. The day promises to be long, filled with both martial and political challenges. You feel the familiar stir of anticipation mixed with fatigue. Such is the life you have chosen, or perhaps the life that chose you. As you leave the chamber, the morning sun fully rises, bathing the castle in warm light. You steel yourself for the day ahead, knowing that every decision, every action could ripple far beyond the castle walls. The midday sun beats down as you mount your horse once more, this time leading a small group of knights and archers on a patrol along the outer borders of your lord's lands. The path winds through open fields and dense woodlands, a patchwork of cultivated farmland and wild nature that seems to hold its breath beneath the summer heat. Your horse's hooves drum steadily on the dirt road, dust swirling softly in the dry air. This patrol isn't just about keeping watch for raiders or rival forces. It's a vital exercise in asserting your lord's authority and maintaining peace among the scattered villages and hamlets. You know that sometimes the greatest threat comes not from armies, but from the unpredictable moods of local disputes and restless peasants. You remind yourself of a straightforward fact. Patrols were a common and essential part of medieval military strategy, keeping lines of communication open and deterring small-scale raids or banditry. But there's an often overlooked detail. Knights on patrol frequently acted as mediators and judges, settling disputes before they escalated. Your role blends enforcement with diplomacy, a delicate balance. Along the way, you stop at a crossroads, where two farmers argue over water rights. The dispute is minor but heated. You dismount and step between them, your presence a calming force. You listen carefully as each side presents their case, then suggest a compromise involving scheduled irrigation times. The farmers nod reluctantly, clearly relieved to avoid further conflict. It's curious how knights were often expected to be peacemakers as well as warriors. There's a medieval story of a knight who, armed with nothing but a wooden staff, diffused a potentially deadly feud between rival clans simply by speaking calmly and fairly. Historians still debate whether these tales are romanticized or based on real diplomacy skills knights practiced. The patrol continues into a dense copse where you hear the faint rustle of movement. You signal your men to be silent and draw your sword lightly, heart steady but alert. It turns out to be a wandering minstrel, a thin figure carrying a lute and an easy smile. You relax, lowering your blade, and share a brief conversation. The minstrel offers a tale of distant lands and exotic battles, a welcome distraction from the steady routine of duty. You think about how stories and music were vital in medieval life, spreading news and boosting morale. Even in times of war, a good tale or song could bring comfort and remind you of the wider world beyond the castle walls. As you guide your group back toward the stronghold, the sun begins to dip low, casting long shadows across the fields. You feel the fatigue in your muscles, but also the steady satisfaction of a day spent fulfilling your duties both as protector and mediator. This life is not only about the thrill of battle, but the quiet moments of connection and authority. The castle gates swing open as you approach, welcoming you back to safety. The air inside is cool, a gentle respite from the heat outside. You dismount, pat your horse's neck, and take a moment to breathe in the mingled scents of stone, wood, and smoke. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but for now, you carry the day's lessons with you, the power of listening, the weight of leadership, and the unexpected kindness found in a stranger's story. Night has wrapped the castle in a velvet cloak as you settle into your chamber after a long day of riding and council. The flickering light of a single candle casts dancing shadows on the rough stone walls, your armor resting silently on its rack nearby. Tonight, your thoughts turn inward to the rituals and routines that bring order to your life, the quiet moments that prepare body and mind for whatever trials tomorrow may hold. You draw out a small, worn journal, a rare luxury, for a night, and trace your fingers over the parchment. Writing is still a novelty among your peers, but you find comfort in recording your thoughts, the events of the day, and even the occasional sketch of a bird or flower seen on patrol. This act of reflection feels like a secret escape, a small rebellion against the constant demands of duty, a mainstream fact to keep in mind. While literacy was limited among knights, many were educated in reading and writing, especially those serving as advisors or holding land. The ability to correspond and keep records was an important skill, often overlooked in the popular image of knights. You remember a quirky medieval practice. Some knights kept love tokens, or poems from ladies of the court, sometimes tucked secretly into their armor or helmets during battle for luck. The idea of carrying a tender reminder amid the harshness of war seems strangely heartwarming, a blend of vulnerability and courage. Historians still debate how deeply romantic the culture of courtly love truly was, or if it was mostly a poetic ideal. From your own experience, it's clear that even the toughest warriors had softer sides hidden behind layers of mail and bravado. You carefully open your journal and begin to write about today's council meeting, the border patrol, and the peaceful resolution of the farmers' dispute. Your hand moves steadily, the familiar scratch of quill on parchment a soothing rhythm. Writing helps you untangle the complexities of loyalty, honor, and leadership that swirl in your mind like autumn leaves. Outside your window, the night air carries the distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of tree branches swaying gently. You pause, listening to the quiet sounds of the castle settling down, the muffled steps of a servant, the crackle of a hearth fire in a neighboring chamber. Your thoughts drift to the role of knights in preserving knowledge and culture. Not just fighting battles. Some knights were patrons of artists, builders of churches, and keepers of manuscripts. The legacy of knighthood extends far beyond the sword, into the realm of art, architecture, and learning. As you close your journal, the candle's flame flickers low, casting a final warm glow before dimming. You stretch out on your straw mattress, the rough fabric oddly comforting. The day's weight begins to lift, replaced by a calm sense of purpose. Tonight, you rest not only your body but your spirit, knowing that tomorrow will bring new challenges, new decisions, and new stories to record. Dawn breaks cool and misty as you prepare for a rare but solemn duty, the inspection of the castle's armory and stores. The heavy wooden doors creak open to reveal rows of weapons, armor, and supplies meticulously arranged along the stone walls. The scent of oiled leather, cold steel, and aged wood fills the air, a familiar and reassuring bouquet that speaks to readiness and resilience. Your role here is crucial, ensuring that every sword is sharp, every helmet intact, and every arrow fletched properly could mean the difference between victory and disaster. The armory is a silent partner in every campaign, its contents waiting patiently for the call to action. A well-known fact, medieval castles often maintained vast stockpiles of arms and provisions, carefully inventoried to sustain lengthy sieges. The armorer, while a humble figure, held significant responsibility for the upkeep and distribution of weapons. As you move through the racks, your fingers brushing the polished hilts and worn leather straps, you recall a curious detail. Some knights preferred their own personalized gear, adorned with heraldic symbols or secret markings only they could recognize. These unique touches served as identifiers on the chaotic battlefield, but also as talismans of personal pride. Historians still debate how standardized medieval weaponry really was. While mass production was impossible, some castles favored uniformity for ease of repair and training, while others allowed more individual customization. Your own sword bears the faint etching of a forgotten smith's mark, a subtle reminder of the craftsmanship behind your tools. Next, you inspect the food stores. Sacks of grain, barrels of salted meat, and dried herbs packed carefully in wooden crates. Preservation techniques were surprisingly advanced. Smoking, salting, and pickling ensured supplies lasted months, vital during winter or siege. You take a moment to savor the aroma of spiced dried apples and toasted barley, imagining the meals prepared for the knights after a hard day's fight. The kitchen's warmth and smells will soon fill the corridors again, a welcome contrast to the cold stones of the armory. As you finish your inspection, a squire approaches with news from the village, a report of strange lights seen near the forest edge. You file the information with a slight frown, aware that rumors and omens often mingled with reality in these lands. The night air cools as you step outside, the setting sun casting long shadows over the castle walls. You pause to look up at the stars, the vast sky stretching infinitely above. The constellations offer silent guidance, much as the faith you carry offers strength. In moments like this, you appreciate the delicate balance of a knight's life. Strength, tempered by vigilance, courage balanced by wisdom. The armory may hold the weapons, but it is the spirit behind them that truly shapes destiny. The village bell rings early this morning, its hollow clang echoing across the hills, signaling a festival day. After weeks of tension, border patrols, political whispers, and long council sessions, it's a rare reprieve for both villages and castle folk alike. You rise before the sun, a little less stiff today, and feel the buzz of anticipation humming even through the stone floor. Today's celebration marks the feast day of a local saint, long woven into the fabric of the region's faith and folklore. There will be music, dancing, and storytelling. Even knights, symbols of stern duty, are expected to attend, not just as protectors, but as part of the community. As you make your way down to the village, the roads are already lined with banners. Stitched in bright, if slightly faded colors, children run ahead of carts loaded with apples, honey cakes, and barrels of weak but cheerful ale. The church doors stand open, filled with the scent of wax, thyme, and centuries of whispered prayers, a mainstream fact. Feast days in medieval Europe were not just religious observances. They served as crucial breaks from labor and chances for community gathering. For many, they were among the few days in the year marked by both indulgence and joy. You pause at the churchyard as a group of village boys enacts a mock joust, using broomsticks and upside-down buckets for helmets. You smile, watching as one dramatically dies and sprawls onto a patch of grass, tongue sticking out with theatrical flair. The others cheer and swap roles. One of them recognizes you and offers a hesitant salute. You return it with exaggerated solemnity, causing the boys to break into giggles. Inside the village square, things are coming to life. A troupe of musicians sets up near a hay cart, tuning lutes and setting out small drums. A row of women display fine embroidery, herbal tinctures, and carved wooden spoons. Everything smells of cinnamon, smoke, and the earthy sweetness of straw. You join the other knights beneath a modest canopy near the ale stand. Armor has been swapped for simpler tunics adorned with your crests, a more approachable appearance. For a day like this, a few brave villagers come to greet you, offering respectful bows and small tokens, a ribbon, a sprig of lavender, even a prayer charm. One older woman clasps your hand and thanks you quietly for resolving the irrigation quarrel from the previous week. Her eyes are sharp, her fingers strong from a life of labor. It's moments like this that remind you of the invisible threads between warrior and community. Then comes the dancing. A circle forms, hands joined, feet moving in sync to a lively beat. You're drawn in, half voluntarily, half dragged by a laughing merchant, and soon find yourself stepping awkwardly but cheerfully in time. Your sword arm isn't much help when it comes to footwork, but your efforts earn genuine applause. Somewhere in the crowd, you hear a minstrel recounting tales of a knight who once danced so poorly, even his horse blushed. One quirky fact worth noting: medieval knights were expected to be well-rounded. Dancing, chess, poetry, and even playing musical instruments were considered essential parts of courtly training. Grace in movement, after all, reflected grace in battle, or so the theory went. Historians still argue whether these knightly cultural expectations were widespread or limited to higher nobility. But for you, it's a charming truth that being a knight isn't all steel and scars. It's also rhythm, laughter, and the occasional stomped toe. As the day wanes, the village prepares for the final ritual, the lighting of the great bonfire. Logs are stacked high in the center square, doused with oil, and lit just after sunset. Flames leap skyward, casting dancing shadows across faces young and old. Someone begins a chant, half song, half prayer, and the voices join in, low, melodic. Ancient, you stand at the edge of the fire's warmth, arms crossed, watching the sparks drift like fireflies into the night. The glow lights the edges of your tunic, and for a moment you're just one figure among many, warmed by the same flame. There's something deeply human about this gathering. No titles, no swords, no looming wars, just bread, song, and shared. Flame, and beneath the stars, under the protective gaze of both castle and night, the village breathes easy. The morning after the festival arrives slowly, as though the sun itself partied too hard and needed a bit of extra time to stretch. You rise quietly, your limbs pleasantly sore from dancing and laughter, your mind still echoing with the chants and flickers of last night's fire. Today feels different, not just because of the lightness in the air, but because this is your last full day before the king's messenger arrives with your next command. As a knight, your life is one of movement and duty. This castle, these villages, this countryside, they are familiar, but they're not permanent. You're part of a living chessboard, always awaiting the next summons. But today, just for today, you'll walk the grounds slowly, savoring each moment. You begin at the stables, where your horse greets you with a huff and a stamp. She's a strong destrier, sleek and intelligent, her saddle custom-fitted, her bridle recently repaired. You feed her a few crisp apples, speaking to her softly. She's carried you through countless terrains, her breathing as familiar to you as your own. A mainstream fact, knights often had close bonds with their horses, sometimes naming them after saints, battles, or even weather patterns. A good warhorse was a knight's lifeline, trained to trample, charge, and even bite enemies when needed. As you walk along the training field, you catch sight of the squires practicing maneuvers under the supervision of your second-in-command. They flinch and laugh, dropping swords in the dirt, grumbling at bruised shins and missed footwork. You watch quietly, a strange blend of pride and memory swelling in your chest. Not so long ago, you were just like them, clumsy, eager, and half certain you'd never master the lance. Nearby, a stone bench offers you a spot to rest. You sit, arms draped across your knees, eyes scanning the low hills that cradle the castle. You remember patrols that stretched from here to the coast, feasts that turned into whispered alliances, and early morning rides where the mist hugged the earth like a secret. One quirky fact from your travels returns to you. In a distant province, knights swore loyalty by touching their swords to a roasted chicken leg, not a holy relic. It was allegedly the highest honor in that region, and no one dared mock it. You'd accepted the gesture with a perfectly straight face, only letting out your laughter after a particularly greasy handshake ended the ceremony. Historians still debate how consistent knightly customs were across regions. Chivalry, for all, its romantic packaging, was a patchwork of local rituals, personal codes, and the occasional food-based oath. Later, you visit the castle library, a cool, quiet room lined with vellum manuscripts and hand-painted maps. You run your fingers along the shelves, marveling at how many stories and laws and prayers are contained within such delicate bindings. A few are your own contributions, battle reports, treaty drafts, even a half-finished poem written during a siege when sleep wouldn't come. The librarian, a stooped man with ink-stained sleeves, nods in recognition but says nothing. He knows. You come here for silence. You leaf through a favorite manuscript, an atlas of mythical beasts lovingly illustrated by some long-dead monk with an overactive imagination. There's the ever-confusing fish that looks like a bishop, the winged cat of the Pyrenees, and a two-headed dragon supposedly spotted in a Flemish wood. You chuckle softly. Perhaps being a knight isn't so different from being a scribe. Both chase stories in a way, some inked, some fought. Evening approaches, and you walk the outer wall one final time. The light turns golden, pooling like honey across the battlements. Far below, the village glows with small fires and lamplight. Somewhere a flute plays a slow, sweet tune. Your footsteps echo on the stone as you pace slowly, the cool wind tugging at your cloak. You think about what you'll tell the king's messenger tomorrow. You'll accept whatever task is given, of course, you always do, but part of you wonders if the next journey will be harder to return from, not in the physical sense, but in the way it shifts something inside. You lean against the parapet and let your thoughts drift, remembering faces, friends lost in battle, lovers glimpsed across. Banquet halls, villagers who offered a smile or a blessing when you passed. These memories form the true armor you wear, deeper than chainmail, heavier than a helm. The stars begin to emerge, faint pinpricks at first, then brighter, clustered like secrets waiting to be shared. You exhale slowly, watching your breath curl into the dusk. Soon, you'll return to the saddle, to unfamiliar lands and unfamiliar battles. But tonight, you are still here, still grounded, still watching the stars rise over the castle you protected. And now, with your day behind you and the stars fully overhead, it's time to let go. The castle lies quiet, its walls bathed in silver moonlight, its halls hushed and still. The fires have dimmed, the guards have softened their steps, and the village below slumbers peacefully, wrapped in the warmth of full bellies and shared laughter. You retreat to your chamber one last time, the air cool and sweet as you slide beneath. Wool blankets, the stone walls no longer feel cold but strong, like arms gently holding you as you rest. Somewhere, your horse shifts in her stall, the stables breathing with life, calm and secure. You think of everything you've done, the fields crossed, the feasts shared, the armor donned and removed again and again. You've led, you've laughed, you've listened. You've stood at the edge of danger and beauty alike, and tonight, as your eyes begin to close, you carry it all with you. Let the memories soften, let the night surround you. Let your breath grow deeper, slower, steadier. You are safe. You are home, and whether tomorrow brings snow or sun, journey or peace, you'll meet it with the same quiet strength you always have. Sleep well, brave knight.